This is the commercial written general category. You're landing at a Class D airport with the tower not in operation. Which of the following airspace rules apply? Class E surface rules apply, or a combination of Class E to 700 feet AGL and Class G to the surface rules apply. What are the vertical limits of a Victor airway in the continental U.S.? From 1,200 feet AGL up to the overlying control airspace. In the contiguous U.S., excluding the airspace at and below 2,500 feet AGL, an operable coded transponder equipped with Mode C capability is required in all airspace above 10,000 feet MSL. While in flight, a helicopter and airplane are converging on a 90-degree angle, and the helicopter is located to the right of the airplane. Which aircraft has the right-of-way? The helicopter, because it's to the right of the airplane. While you're approaching to land, you see another aircraft of the same category in the landing configuration for the same runway. Which aircraft has the right-of-way? The aircraft at the lower altitude. A pilot flying a single-engine airplane observes a multi-engine airplane approaching from the left. Which pilot should give way? The pilot of the multi-engine airplane should give way. The single-engine airplane is to its right. Your airplane is overtaking another airplane. Which airplane has the right-of-way? The airplane you are overtaking has the right-of-way and should expect to be passed on the right. An airplane is overtaking a helicopter. Which aircraft has a right-of-way? Helicopter. The pilot should be passed on the right. What's the maximum indicated airspeed authorized in the airspace underlying Class B airspace? 200 knots. One leg of your trip will be within 4 nautical miles and 2,500 feet above ground level of a Class D airport. What should your speed be? 200 knots. What is the minimum altitude and flight visibility required for acrobatic flight? 1,500 feet above ground level and 3 miles. Which is true regarding pilot certification requirements for operation in Class B airspace? The PIC must at least hold a private pilot certificate. When operating an airplane for the purpose of takeoff or landing within the Class D airspace, under special VFR, what minimum distance from clouds and what visibility are required? Remain clear of clouds, and the ground visibility must be at least 1 statute mile. At some airports located in Class D airspace, where ground visibility is not reported, takeoff and landing under special VFR are authorized by ATC if the flight visibility is at least 1 statute mile. While altimeter setting is required when operating an aircraft at 18,000 feet MSL, 29er 2. When approaching to land at an airport without an operating control tower in the Class G airspace, the pilot should make all turns to the left, unless otherwise indicated. When operating an aircraft in the vicinity of an airport with an operating control tower in Class E airspace, a pilot must establish communications prior to 4 nautical miles and up to and including 2,500 feet AGL. You're operating out of a non-towered satellite airport with Class C airspace. Your aircraft must be equipped with an ATC transponder and altitude reporting equipment. What are the requirements for communication when operating from a non-towered satellite airport in Class C airspace? Establish two-way radio communications with an appropriate ATC facility having jurisdiction as soon as practicable after departure. Refer to Figure 2.7. Point 7. The floor of the Class Echo airspace over the town of Woodland is both 700 feet and 1,200 feet above ground level. That's because it's half in the fuzzy magenta, and half out of. Refer to figure 52.8. The floor of the Class Echo airspace over the Auburn Airport is 2,239 feet. That's because you take their field elevation and you add 700 feet to it. Refer to figure 53.1. The shaded black line is most likely a military training route. Refer to figure 52.9. The alert area depicted within the magenta lines is an area which there is a high volume of pilot training activities or an unusual type of aerial activities, either of which are dangerous or hazardous to aircraft. Refer to figure 52.4. The highest obstruction within 10 nautical miles of Lincoln Regional Airport is how high above the ground. So over here we have our 662 feet. Refer to figure 52.6. Van Vleck Airport is a non-public use airport. Refer to figure 53.3. You're on a day VFR flight approaching Madeira, right here, airport from the northwest this way at 1,100 feet in the south. Your flight visibility is 1 statute mile. Before you reach the area of magenta shading on the chart, you observe sufficient ground reference to navigate to the airport safely. What must you do when approaching the airport? Descend below 700 feet. Descend below 700 feet AGL to avoid controlled airspace. 51. When exiting a runway, you are clear of the active runway when the aircraft is past this line. And figure G, that's our the sign D would most likely be found at an intersection where a Broadway may be mistaken as a taxiway. While clearing an active runway, you are most likely to be clear of the ILS critical area when you pass which sign? Here's our ILS critical area. So H. Which symbol does not directly address runway incursion with another aircraft? Class D. Because it's just keeping you from going on a roadway. With regard to the technique required for a crosswind correction on takeoff, a pilot should use rudder as required to maintain directional control, aileron pressure into the wind, and higher than normal liftoff airspeed in both conventional and nose wheel type airplanes. The weather report at the destination indicates turbulence. When approaching to land, you should fly power on approach at a slightly higher than normal airspeed. A pilot's most immediate and vital concern in the event of a complete engine failure after becoming airborne on takeoff is maintaining a safe airspeed. Which type of approach and landing is recommended during a gusty wind conditions? A power-on approach and a power-on landing. What is the general direction of movement of the other aircraft if, during a night flight, you observe a steady white light and a rotating red light ahead and at your altitude? The other aircraft is headed away from you. You'll be departing behind a large aircraft. At what point on the runway should you plan to rotate prior to the large aircraft's rotation point? To avoid possible wake turbulence from a large jet aircraft that has just landed prior to your takeoff, at what point on the runway should you plan to become airborne? Past the point from where the jet touched down. When landing behind a large aircraft, which procedure should you be following for vortex avoidance? Stay above its final approach flight path all the way to touchdown. To scan properly for traffic, a pilot should use a series of short, regularly spaced eye movements that bring successive areas of the sky into central visual field. Which is a common symptom of hyperventilation? Drowsiness. Rapid breathing associated with hyperventilation would most likely result in carbon dioxide leaving the body. Hypoxia is the result of which of these conditions? Insufficient oxygen reaching the brain. To overcome the symptom of hyperventilation, a pilot should decrease the breathing rate. Hypoxia due to inhalation of carbon monoxide increases as altitude increases. To best overcome the effects of spatial disorientation, a pilot should rely on aircraft instrument indications. When departing from a runway that is covered with snow or slush, what could a pilot do to prevent damage to the landing gear during these conditions? Do not retract the landing gear immediately to allow the landing gear to air dry. Risk management as part of the ADM process relies on which feature to reduce the risk associated with each flight? Situational awareness, problem recognition, and good judgment. The ADM is a systematic approach to the mental process used by pilots to consistently determine the best course of action for a given set of circumstances. The ADM process identifies the steps involved in a good decision-making. One of these steps includes a pilot identifying personal attitudes hazardous to safe flight. The basic drive for a pilot to demonstrate the right stuff can have an adverse effect on safety by generating tendencies that lead to practices that are dangerous, often illegal, and may lead to mishap. Most pilots have fallen prey to dangerous tendencies or behavioral problems at some time. Some of these dangerous tendencies or behavioral patterns, which must be identified and eliminated, include peer pressure, get-there-itis, loss of positional or situational awareness, and operating without adequate fuel reserves. An early part of the ADM process involves taking a self-assessment hazardous attitude inventory test. When a pilot recognizes a hazardous thought, he or she then should correct it by stating the corresponding antidote. Which of the following is the antidote for macho? Taking chances is foolish. What does good cockpit stress management begin with? Good life stress management. While conducting an operational check of the cabin pressure system, the pilot discovers that the rate control feature is inoperative. He knows that he can manually control the cabin pressure, so he elects to disregard this discrepancy, departs on his trip. He will just handle the system himself. Which of the following alternatives best illustrates invulnerability reaction? What's the worst that could happen? The pilot and passengers are anxious to get to their destination for a business presentation. Level 4 thunderstorms are reported to be in a line across their intended route of flight. Which of the following alternatives best illustrates the impulsivity reaction? They want to hurry and get going before things get worse. While on an IFR flight, a pilot emerges from a cloud to find himself within 300 feet of a helicopter. Which of the following alternatives best illustrates the macho reaction? He flies a little closer, just to show him. When a pilot recognizes a hazardous thought, he or they then should correct it by applying the corresponding antidote. Which of the following is the antidote for anti-authority / don't tell me hazardous attitude? Follow the rules, they're usually right. A pilot and friends are going to fly an out-of-town football game. When the passengers arrive, the pilot determines that they will be over maximum gross weight for takeoff with the excess fuel load. Which of the following alternatives best illustrates the resignation reaction? Well, nobody told him about the extra weight. Which of the following is the final step in the decide module for effective risk management and ADM? Evaluate. Which of the following is the first step of this decide module for effective risk management and ADM? Detect. The decide module is comprised of a 6-step process to provide a pilot a logical way of approaching ADM making. These steps are detect, estimate, choose, identify, do, and evaluate. The decide module: detect, estimate, choose, identify, do, and evaluate. When exiting a runway, the runway exit sign indicates the direction to turn to exit the runway onto the named taxiway. When turning onto a taxiway from another taxiway, the taxiway directional sign indicates the designation and direction of the taxiways leading out of an intersection. A coded transponder equipped with altitude reporting equipment is required for Class A, B, and C airspace areas. Number 1. When planning for an emergency, landing at night, one of the primary considerations should include selecting a landing area close to public access if possible. When operating a VFR at night, what is the first indication of flying into restricted visibility conditions? A gradual disappearance of lights on the ground. For night flying operations, the best night vision is achieved when rods in the eyes have become adjusted to the darkness in approximately 30 minutes. An idea of the magnitude of the load factor obtained while maneuvering an airplane can be determined by considering the degree to which one is pressed down into the seat. After experiencing a power plant failure at night, what action is a first priority? Maintain positive control of the aircraft. Refer to figure 64. You see this sign when holding short of the runway, you receive a clearance to back taxi on the runway for a full-length runway 26 departure. Which way would you turn when the first taxiing on the runway for takeoff? You gotta turn left. Refer to figure 900. This sign confirms your position on taxiing to runway 22. So you're on the Bravo taxiway. That means you're going to a runway, probably. Refer to figure 901. This sign can be found on either side of the taxiway. What is the purpose of a runway threshold bar? Indicates the beginning of a runway with a displaced threshold. Refer to figure 58. Where would you see this sign? At spots 10 and 11. So as you pull up to the runway there. Refer to figure 64. You receive the clearance Cessna 123AB, fly runway heading, climb and maintain 3,000 feet. Clear for takeoff runway 26. And you see this sign. Which way do you turn? To the right, because you're turning onto the runway, ready for takeoff. The term airport means an area of land or water that is used or intended to be used for the landing and takeoff of aircraft, and includes its buildings and facilities, if any. Refer to figure 61. According to this sign, you are on taxiway Alpha. Refer to figure 56. The ground controller instructs you to taxi and hold short of runway 22. Upon reaching the holding area, which sign do you see? Neither of them. While en route to your destination, you see an aircraft in your periphery that appears to be 400 feet from your aircraft. Should you file a near mid-air collision report? Yes, to the nearest FAA ATC facility or flight service station, FSS. Information concerning the aircraft registration application or the aircraft bill of sale can be obtained from a FSDO. A pilot flying in a fatigued state is a hazard because flying fatigued is flying impaired. Statistics show that 75% of accidents occur due to improper human performance. Refer to figure 53.4. The floor of the Class Echo airspace over Johnston Airport, MD, is 1,200 feet AGL because it's not inside this fuzzy magenta. Humans are characteristically poor monitors of automation. Some advantages of automation systems may be offset by inherent limitations. Your charter flight customers want to take a flight that will land at Reagan International. You must undergo special awareness training and receive a certificate of completion before making this flight. Which phase of flight increases your chance of experiencing somatogravic illusion? Rapid acceleration on takeoff. You're planning a VFR cross-country flight that will take you within a 16 nautical mile radius of the Washington, D.C. VOR-DME facility. Prior to conducting this flight, you must complete special awareness training. Refer to figure 53.4. You're on Victor 230, heading southwest. You're heading this way. At 3,500 feet, you are 2 nautical miles north of the Johnston Airport. What is your minimum visibility and cloud clearance? You're gonna have 3 static miles of visibility, 1,000 feet above, 500 feet below, 2,000 feet horizontal, because you're in Class Echo. Refer to figure 53.3. The floor of the controlled airspace over the Fireball Airport is 700 feet AGL. You're planning a VFR cross-country flight whose route will pass near to, but not more than, 60 nautical mile radius from the Washington, D.C. VOR-DME facility. You know that the flight may be conducted in accordance with current regulations. Refer to figure 52.3. There we go. What is the height of the terrain at the obstruction located 1 nautical mile northwest of Robbins? Robbins? Oh, Robbins is over here. Northwest. So 26 feet. Here's our refer to figure 52. You're planning on operating a flight in the vicinity of Van Vleck Airport, Area 6. You notice unforecast thunderstorms to the west of the airport. How can you receive weather updates without leaving the aircraft? You can contact, this Ranchero Murrieta. You can contact their flight service station right here, 1222. How long does it take for the body to rid itself of 1 ounce of alcohol after consumption? 3 hours. What are your responsibilities as a pilot when entering and or traversing an alert area? An alert area is to inform non-participating pilots of areas that may contain a high volume of pilot training or an unusual type of aerial activity. Pilots should exercise caution in alert areas. Pilots should be cautious about flying too soon after drinking because considerable amounts of alcohol can remain in the body for over 16 hours. Why is a fatigued pilot a hazard? A pilot or co-pilot may not realize that they are too tired to fly until serious errors are made. Refer to figure 53.1. Right here. Day VFR flight from Madeira. Madeira's over here. Airport. The floor of the controlled airspace over the airport is 700 feet. AGL. To avoid landing at the wrong airport or the wrong runway, a pilot should follow the instrument approach chart for the appropriate runway. Refer to figure 51, illustration F. Okay. If you were stopped on that airport surface area and the sign and the figure was visible, where are you located? On runway 22. 200 knots indicated is the maximum airspeed in the underlying airspace underlying Class B airspace. The no entry sign identifies paved area where aircraft entry is prohibited. Refer to figure 52.6. You depart from Rancho Muerta VFR direct to SMF, which is this. So we're going from here to up here. Your auto flight takes you directly through the MHR, Class D airspace. Is hearing your call sign read by SMF air controllers sufficient to enter the MHR airspace? No, you still need to get permission from the MHR tower controllers. Figure 54.1. You're departing Livermore. VFR en route to San Francisco. You must have an ATC clearance because you're going into Class Bravo. Refer to figure 53. What's the required visibility? Well, that's 5.4. There it is. If you are VFR northeast bound on V230, northeast bound. Okay, we're heading to the right. At 5,500 MSL, passing north of the Johnston Airport. 3 statute miles because we're in Class Echo. Automated navigation systems can create both an increase and decrease in situational awareness. Refer to figure 53.2. You're planning to pre-flight your aircraft at Fresno Chandler. Is that this? Yeah, down here. When a fog bank rolls from the northwest, how can you receive a weather update without leaving the aircraft? You contact Ranchero Muerto Radio VHF 122.2 or call from your cell phone. When planning a cross-country flight, you see a thin black shaded line, MTR, labeled VR1007. What altitude does the MTR extend? All of the route is below 1,500 feet. Refer to figure 903. While taxiing for takeoff, the controller gives you instructions to hold short of runway 15 approach area, and you see the sign. Follow the instructions, ensure protection for runway 15 approaches and runway 33 departures. Refer to figure 54. Penetrating the airspace labeled R2531 is allowed. I don't see her, but it's R, so it's a restricted airspace. Is allowed but may be extremely hazardous. What is the maximum indicated airspeed allowed in a Class Bravo VFR corridor? 200 knots. You're going to fly some friends to a football game in another state. Your weight and balance calculations indicate that you are over maximum gross takeoff weight. What's your alternatives? You can reduce fuel or baggage to bring weight within normal operations of the performance chart. Your PIC of a flight that was supposed to have departed earlier that day, but the passengers are late in arriving. Inclement weather is forecast for your route of flight. What are your alternatives? Evaluate current and forecast weather conditions and determine if the flight can be made safely. Refer to figure 57. What is the significance of the dot between the 10 and the 21? Runway 10 and runway 21 are both accessible by following the arrow on this sign. Refer to figure 904. You're landing on runway 3. During the ground roll, you notice this sign. You know that you have 3,000 feet of runway remaining. What is the airspeed limit in Class C airspace? 200 knots. The sectional chart indicates that your flight will take you to an airport depicted with a blue segmented circle. What's the minimum required visibility to enter this airspace under VFR? You need 3 statute miles of visibility to enter Class Delta airspace. Refer to figure 52, area 7. So, what's the length of the longest runway at Sacramento International Airport? 8,600. We see this little 86 right here. Refer to figure 52.8. What's the minimum surface visibility for a VFR flight to take off from Auburn Airport? 1 statute mile, because it's Gulf airspace. What weather reports indicate that you will have a direct crosswind upon landing? You must keep your longitudinal axis aligned with the runway. Refer to figure 52.4. The terrain elevation and obstruction located approximately 3.5 nautical miles south of the Lincoln Airport is 11 feet lower than the airport elevation. A placard inside your aircraft reads, "Use of air conditioner may cause the compass to read incorrectly. The magnetic compass is showing the effects of magnetic deviation. You think you're experiencing hyperventilation. Some symptoms may include muscle spasms and impaired vision. Refer to figure 53. You're planning a VFR flight westbound, departing from Fresno. Your flight path is passing through Lemoore, MOA. You exercise extreme caution. Refer to figure 59. You're on taxiway A. If you were to turn 90 degrees to the right, which taxiway would you be on? E. Figure 60. You just landed and cleared the runway. Ground control gives you the following instructions. Cessna 12AB, taxi to the ramp via taxiway Alpha. Turn right on taxiway Echo. You proceed down the taxiway Alpha and encounter only sign number 1 and no other taxiway signs or taxiways. What has occurred? You have passed Echo and are at the end of Alpha. SPIC towers cleared you to land runway 18 and hold short of runway 26A. After you land, you roll out past this sign. This indicates that you failed to comply with the clearance and passed the hold short point of runway 18. With a calm wind approach speed of 70 knots, what speed should be used when the gusts are 15, if not specified in the AFM-POH? 77. You'll be more susceptible to hypoxia if you conduct a flight after donating blood. While flight planning using a sectional chart, you realize that your planned route takes you through a shaded blue area labeled P40. What action must be taken? Remain clear of this area. Prohibited. Under what condition would a pilot make right turn traffic in a pattern that at an airport in class Gulf airspace without an operating control tower? The airport has visual markings indicating that turns should be made to the right. You're in a traffic pattern and you realize that you are in imminent danger of colliding with another aircraft. What is the first thing you should do? Take immediate evasive action. You're planning a VFR flight. If you are experiencing a pilot fatigue, you will minimize this risk by rethinking your plans and perhaps postponing the flight. You're on approach and you realize that you're going to undershoot the runway. Suddenly retracting the flaps will decrease your lift and cause the aircraft to sink rapidly. For figure 58. You're ready to taxi from the west ramp. ATC gives you the following instructions. Cessna 123BC, taxi to runway 06 via Alpha Bravo and hold short of 06. Where would you stop on your taxiing comply with the clearance? So you're going to taxiway Alpha, you're going to stop at position 9 to cross the runway. You'll be using an avionics package that you've never used before. The day of the flight, your weather briefing forecasts a ceiling of 300 feet, overcast, and 1 static mile of visibility at your destination. What's the best action? The risks are too high, so you delay the flight and wait for conditions to improve. Why would an aircraft be equipped with more than one power source for the turn coordinator, attitude indicator, and heading indicator? So at least one gyroscopic instrument continues to operate in case one power source fails. Refer to figure 58. You're south of the airfield and ATC tells you to enter midfield for a left downwind runway 24. What is the magnetic heading B no wind when you are established on downwind? 060. You find out that the aircraft you fly at the local flight club has a new airworthiness directive. Where do you look to confirm that the aircraft is in compliance? In the appropriate aircraft records. Refer to figure 61. Receive an ATC clearance. Cessna 123AB, taxi to runway 17 via Alpha Tango. You're on taxiway Alpha. 45 degree to the right will take you to Tango.